The REWRD in the cold silence of space. The war had ended. Humanity had won. But at a heavy cost, ships floated like broken bones across the stars. Soldiers returned, some as heroes, many as ghosts. But one man, Captain Raylan Knox, was still waiting for orders. He stood alone inside the metal halls of the command ship. His armor was scratched, his boots stained with alien dust. He had fought hard, followed every order, and survived battles others didn't. Now he was called to the upper deck to receive something. He thought maybe it was a medal or maybe a discharge. But what waited for him was not a medal. It was a girl. No, not a girl, an alien. She stood silently, her arms chained in glowing cuffs. Her skin was blue like the oceans of old Earth. Her eyes were silver and shining, but tired. She looked young, but not weak. There was something in her stare, not hate, not fear, something else. "She's yours now," said General Brack, the old war commander, "a reward for your loyalty, your victories." Raylan blinked, unsure what to say. "She's a slave?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Not anymore," the general said with a grin. "She belongs to you. Do what you want. She won't fight back." Raylan looked at her again. This time longer. She didn't speak, didn't move, just stood still like a statue. The collar around her neck had alien symbols glowing red. He didn't understand them, but he knew they meant something cruel. She wasn't a gift. She was a prisoner. He wanted to walk away, to refuse, but the room was full of eyes. Saying no would raise questions, bring trouble, maybe even charges. So he nodded once and took the chain in his hand. She followed him without a word, her steps silent as they left. The other officers laughed behind him, but Raylan's face was cold, his jaw tight. He didn't feel like a man who had won something. He felt like a man who had been given a lie. He brought her to his quarters. A quiet room with metal walls and one small bed. He unlocked her cuffs, and she looked at him, surprised. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. Still, she didn't speak. But her body relaxed, just a little. He pointed to the bed. "You can rest." He turned away to sleep on the floor. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands on her knees. She didn't try to run, didn't even move much, just stared at the wall, like she was somewhere far away. Later that night, Raylan woke to a soft sound. He opened his eyes to find the room empty. The door was open. She was gone. He ran down the hall, heart pounding. Security alarms hadn't gone off yet. She must be moving quietly. He found her near the cargo bay, standing by a shuttle bay window, not trying to escape, just staring at the stars. "You could have left," he said, walking closer. "I didn't stop you." She turned to him slowly, her silver eyes calm. "I have nowhere to go," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, tired, full of sadness. Raylan looked at her, really looked. She wasn't dangerous. She wasn't weak. She was lost, just like him. He walked beside her and looked out the window too. The stars stretched forever, silent and cold. "So," he said, "what's your name?" She didn't answer, just lowered her head. Maybe she didn't want to say. Or maybe she had forgotten it. He didn't ask again. Back in the room, he gave her food, water, a blanket. She didn't say thank you, but she nodded once. That was enough. For now, that night, as Raylan lay on the floor again, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her eyes. Not just the sadness, but the hidden fire. The way she had stared into space, like she knew something he didn't. Like she was more than what they said. He sat up and looked at her sleeping quietly on the bed. For the first time in weeks, he felt something strange. Not fear, not anger, but curiosity. Who was she really? What had they done to her? And why did it feel like their story was just beginning? The next morning, Raylan woke up before the lights came on. The ship's artificial sun had not yet risen, but he couldn't sleep. He sat on the floor, his back against the cold metal wall. Watching her, she was still asleep on the bed, curled up, breathing slow and calm. Her skin glowed faintly in the dim light. Like soft blue fire, he didn't know her name, where she was from, or what she had seen, but something inside told him she wasn't ordinary. When she finally opened her eyes, they met his. He smiled gently, hoping to ease her fear. "I'm Raylan," he said. "Raylan Knox." She stared at him for a long second. Then looked away. No words came, just silence. He brought her food again, simple protein cubes and water. She ate slowly, watching him carefully between bites, not like an animal, but like someone trained to study danger. Raylan tried asking more questions, but she never answered. Instead, she began to explore his room. She moved like a shadow, quietly, touching objects, studying them. Her fingers danced over wires, small tools, even the heating panel. She took apart a broken scanner on the desk, fixed the loose wire, and put it back together. Raylan didn't stop her. In fact, he was fascinated. That day, he noticed something strange. She always sat near the door, not far, not too close. Her eyes moved to the corners of the room where cameras were hidden. She never looked directly at them, but she knew they were there. Raylan realized she wasn't just smart, she was trained. She wasn't just surviving, she was planning something that pursued something. That night, when the lights dimmed and the hallway quieted, Raylan sat next to her for the first time. "You're not like the others," he said softly. "I've seen slaves, prisoners, even soldiers, but you're different." She didn't reply, but her body shifted slightly. Then, for the first time, she looked straight into his eyes. Her silver gaze felt like lightning, sharp but full of sadness. He whispered, "What did they do to you?" Her lips moved barely, but she said nothing. And then, suddenly, she stood up. She walked to the wall and drew shapes with her finger on the cold metal. Strange symbols, glowing faintly with static energy. Raylan stepped closer, trying to understand. "You can write," he said, amazed. She turned to him, nodded once, then pointed to her collar. The collar around her neck blinked slowly, red and blue. He had thought it was just a symbol of control, a leash, but now he realized it was more. A device, maybe a tracker, maybe something worse. She placed her hand on her chest and spoke one word. It was soft, broken, but clear. "Danger." Raylan froze. "Danger," he repeated. She nodded, then pointed to the ceiling, to the ship, to the sky, to space itself. "Danger is coming." He asked, again. She nodded, and her eyes filled with something close to fear. Raylan stood there, stunned. She wasn't just warning him, she was asking for help. He grabbed a tablet from the desk and pulled up the ship's navigation logs. "No distress signals, no incoming threats," he muttered. But her eyes said otherwise. Then she walked to the scanner she had fixed earlier and opened the back again. She reached inside and pulled out a tiny device, no bigger than a pebble. It pulsed. With soft green light, Raylan's eyes widened. "What is that?" She placed it in his hand and tapped her collar. She drew a circle in the air, then made a motion like a wave crashing. A signal. The collar was sending a signal. Raylan finally understood. "They can track you," he whispered. "Someone is coming." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Outside the room, the hallway lights flickered for a second. A low hum passed through the walls, almost too quiet to notice, but she noticed. Her body tensed. Her breathing quickened. Raylan locked the door and dimmed the lights. "Whatever's coming, we'll face it together," he said. She looked at him again, longer this time. Then, slowly, she reached forward and touched his hand. A small, simple gesture, but powerful. It wasn't just trust, it was the beginning of something else. The ship was quiet. But something had changed. Something had awakened. And in her silver eyes, Raylan saw it, not just fear, but a warning, a secret, a storm. One that was getting closer every second. The ship felt colder now, not because of the temperature, but because of what they both knew. Something was watching, something was listening, and whatever it was getting closer. Raylan stared at the small glowing device in his hand. It was warm and pulsing like a heartbeat. The alien woman, still unnamed, sat quietly across from him. Her eyes never left the collar around her neck. She tapped it again, slowly this time. Then pointed to the tablet screen he had left on the table. Raylan placed the device beside it and opened the ship's signal logs. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. Normal traffic, data reports, encrypted military commands. But then he saw it, a hidden frequency. Something small, steady, and quiet just beneath the surface. His fingers moved faster now, isolating the signal. It was repeating every 7 seconds, a pulse, short and sharp. Like a beacon, it wasn't from the ship, it was coming from the collar. Raylan looked up at her, shocked. "This is a tracker," he said. She nodded slowly. "Who's listening to it?" he asked. She hesitated, then drew something in the air with her finger. A circle, broken down the middle, with 3 dots inside. Raylan didn't understand the symbol, but her face said enough, whoever they were. They were dangerous, and they were coming for her, and maybe for him too. He took a deep breath, stood up, and walked to the storage panel on the wall. From inside, he pulled out a toolkit and a small power cutter. "We need to get that thing off you," he said. Her eyes widened, and she backed away. "No hurt," she said, in a soft voice. Raylan paused, then nodded. "Okay, I'll be careful, I promise." He sat down on the floor and motioned for her to come closer. Slowly, she crawled forward and turned her back to him. He studied the collar, looking for seams, locks, or ports. The metal was alien, smooth, cold, and humming with energy. He pressed the cutter gently against it and powered it on. The tool sparked, but the collar stayed solid. Then the collar lit up, glowing red, and the signal changed, somewhere, out in space. Someone received that alert. Raylan didn't know it yet, but a ship had just changed course. The woman gasped and pulled away, holding her neck. Raylan dropped the tool. His heart pounding. "I'm sorry," he whispered. She shook her head quickly. "No, not your fault," she said, surprising him with her words. "You tried." Raylan stood up and opened the communication logs again. The signal was now stronger. "Louder, they'll find us soon," he said. She stared at the door, then at him. "Not safe here," she said. "Must move." Raylan nodded, already packing supplies. "We'll take a cargo shuttle." "Go off-grid, hide," he said. She touched his hand gently. "Thank you," she whispered. 10 minutes later, they were in the lower decks of the ship. The hangar was quiet, just a few engineers nearby. Raylan used his officer badge to unlock a small transport shuttle. The woman climbed in first. Staying low, staying silent, Raylan followed, and they launched into space with no lights, no signal, just shadows inside the shuttle. She finally started speaking more. Her words were slow and broken, but full of meaning. "Collar is not just tracker," she said. "It also listens, watches." Raylan stared at her. "They've been watching through you." She nodded. "Since capture," she whispered. She looked away for a moment. As if ashamed, Raylan shook his head. "It's not your fault," he said. "They made you into a tool, but I don't see a weapon." She looked at him again, and for the first time, there was something new in her eyes. A tiny spark, something like hope. They flew for hours through asteroid belts and signal dead zones. Raylan didn't ask where she wanted to go. He just flew away from orders, away from the war, away from the eyes in the sky. Finally, she tapped the screen and pointed to a dead moon. No signal, she said. Safe for now. They landed. Inside a broken mining station, covered in dust and shadows. Raylan secured the doors while she sat near the shuttle, quiet again. He knew she was thinking, remembering. He sat beside her. What's your name? He asked softly. She looked up, surprised by the question. My name. Oren, she said slowly. Oren, Raylan repeated. It sounded soft, strange, and beautiful all at once. She looked at him, her voice shaking. They will come. I know, Raylan said. But I'm not leaving you. The collar blinked one last time, then turned black. Raylan didn't know if it had died or if it was now silent. Waiting. But something in Orion's face changed. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was preparing. And this time, Raylan realized she wasn't the one who needed saving. She was the key to something much bigger. Something no one was ready for. Not even him. The mining station was silent. Dust floated in the air like forgotten memories. Old machines sat rusted in corners, untouched for years. And deep in the shadows, two figures hid a human and an alien. Not enemies, not strangers anymore. Raylan. Check the shuttle systems again. Power low, fuel low, oxygen stable for now. Oren sat on the floor nearby, drawing strange shapes into the dust. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't afraid. She was focused. Raylan watched her closely. She drew symbols in a patterned circles, stars, broken lines, coordinates. He asked. She nodded. Not just where, but when. She whispered he didn't understand, but he had learned something important when she spoke. He listened. Her eyes held knowledge that went beyond maps and machines. Suddenly, the come panel blinked red. A signal had reached the edge of the station's dead zone. Raylan stood quickly, checking the screen. Ship incoming, he said quietly. Oren was already moving. Hide. She asked. Raylan shook his head. No use. They'll scan the whole station. He grabbed a blaster and handed her a small tool, a pulse disruptor. She held it like she had used one before. And in that moment, Raylan understood again. She wasn't just a scientist or a slave. She had been trained for something bigger than he could see. They moved through the dark halls of the station. Metal creaked beneath their feet. Above them, a low hum filled the air. A ship entering the atmosphere. Not a human patrol ship. Not a cargo hauler. This one was silent, black, and shaped like a blade. Oren stopped at an old control panel and connected a wire from her wristband. Lights flickered across the screen. She typed fast, her fingers flying. She's trying to shut off the scanners, Raylan realized. Seconds later, power went dark across half the station. But it was too late. They had landed. Footsteps echoed. Down the main corridor, slow, heavy, armored. Raylan peeked through a broken wall panel and saw them. 3 tall figures, covered in black suits with glowing red visors. Not soldiers, not bounty hunters. These were collectors. They didn't ask questions. They only captured, Oren whispered. They want me alive. Raylan looked at her, and me. She didn't answer. Raylan turned back toward the figures. We run on my signal, he said. Oren pulled something from her belt, a small cube, glowing green. She pressed it and rolled it into the hallway. A second later, it exploded with light, not fire, not noise, just blinding white. Raylan grabbed her hand and they ran down a side shaft. Past broken storage crates and fallen beams, the mining station groaned as if waking up. Behind them, footsteps grew louder, faster. They had triggered something. Raylan pulled a lever and a steel gate dropped behind them. It wouldn't hold for long, but maybe long enough. They reached the far docking bay, a forgotten launch pod, half buried in dust. Raylan started activating the controls. The pod shuddered. Refusing to wake, Oren slammed her palm against a glowing panel and whispered something in her language. The pod roared to life, outside the door. Metal claws scraped against the walls. A laser burned through the gate behind them. Raylan fired. Back blindly, forcing the attackers to take cover. Oren, go. He shouted. She grabbed his arm. Together, she said, firmly, they jumped into the pod. And the door sealed shut. Raylan slammed the launch button. The pod exploded upward through the old launch tunnel. Metal groaned, bolts popped, light flashed as they tore through rock and dust. They burst into the sky, free from the station, but not from danger. Behind them, the black ship rose into view, fast, silent, deadly. They're chasing us, Raylan said, gripping the controls. Oren reached over and tapped into the nav. System, she typed a new path, one not in any human maps. A hidden jump point near a collapsing star. Raylan hesitated. That's suicide, he said. Oren looked at him. Trust me, she said simply. The ship behind them charged a weapon. Raylan didn't wait. He activated the jump drive. The star stretched, bent, and disappeared. In the darkness between systems, the pod floated, quiet and safe. For now, Raylan turned to Oren. What are you? He asked. She looked at him, her face calm. I was a scientist, she said. But they made me something else. He didn't push further, but he understood something deep and unspoken. This wasn't just escape. This was the beginning of a much larger fight, and Oren, whatever she had once been, was at the heart of it. The stars outside the pod window blinked slowly, silent, distant, uncaring. Raylan sat near the console, breathing heavy. His hands still shook from the jump. Oren stood behind him, watching the stars. They had escaped, barely, but safety. It was only temporary. He could feel it in the air. They were running, not winning. And running forever wasn't a plan. We can't do this much longer, Raylan said quietly. Oren didn't answer. She placed her palm against the wall, feeling the hum of the engine. Raylan looked over at her. You knew where that jump gate was, he said. Even our maps didn't show it. She turned to him slowly. My people made it, she replied. Before the war, Raylan blinked. How many more of these secrets do you know? Oren walked to the console and pulled up a map. Dozens of points lit up hidden paths, energy wells, ancient machines. She looked at him, her voice soft. They erased us, she said, but we were builders. Raylan stared at the map. Every glowing point was a place humanity had never explored. Places he had never even heard of. She was more than just a survivor. She was a key to a forgotten world. Suddenly, the console beeped. A signal was being received. Raylan checked it quickly, encrypted. Military-grade, human command frequency. He opened it with a code only captains used. A voice came through, calm and clear. Captain Raylan Knox, this is Command Ship Valor. You are ordered to return to human space immediately. Raylan froze. They had found him. Oren stepped back, her face calm, but her body tense. She knew what this meant. They won't let you keep me, she said. Raylan nodded. They'll take you, he said. They'll say you're dangerous, that you're property, evidence, a threat, and you. She asked. He looked at her. They'll call me a traitor. He replied. And are you? She asked again, quietly. Raylan didn't speak. The cum crackled again. You have 12 hours to respond, or we will mark you hostile. The message ended. The silence was louder than the words. Raylan stood up and walked to the back of the pod. He opened a small locker and stared at the emergency beacon. One press would bring a rescue ship. One press would end the running. He could go home. He could save himself. All he had to do was give her up. Behind him, Oren spoke. I won't stop you, she said. If you turn me in, I understand. Raylan turned around quickly. You're not just a fugitive. He said, you're something more. She nodded. I hold memories, she said. Data, tech. History, they want it back. Raylan narrowed his eyes. No, they want to bury it. He stared at the beacon, his hand hovering, and then he closed the locker slowly. I'm not turning you in, he said firmly. Oren looked at him with wide eyes. Why? She asked. Raylan took a breath. Because you trusted me. You had 100 chances to run, to leave, to kill me, but you stayed. I don't know if that means I'm a fool, he said, smiling slightly. But I know what kind of man I want to be. Oren stepped closer. There was something different in her eyes now. No fear, no doubt, only understanding. They stood there for a moment. No words, no need. To people from different worlds choosing the same path. Raylan turned back to the console. He deleted the signal trace, erased the military link, and locked the pod out of the human grid. We're ghosts now, he said. Oren smiled slightly. Then let's haunt them, she replied. He looked at her with surprise. You're starting to sound human. She tilted her head. Maybe I'm becoming something else. They spent the next hours planning. Raylan checked supply routes, pirate lanes, rebel codes. Oren drew maps from memory, routes only her people knew. Together, they searched for a place where the plot war hadn't reached, a place to rebuild, to think, to breathe. But even as they worked, they both knew the truth. They weren't done running. They had made a choice, not the easy one, not the safe one, but the right one. And now the real war was about to begin. The pod floated in the black silence between systems. No light from stars, no signals from ships. Just darkness, cold and endless. It should have felt lonely, but it didn't. Inside, Raylan and Oren sat close together. The tiny ship had become their world. No orders, no maps, no sides, only the space between them. Oren sat near the window, drawing again in the fog of her breath. Circles, stars, waves. She looked peaceful. Raylan watched her for a long time. Then smiled. You always draw the same pattern, he said. It's home, she whispered. A place I might never see again. Raylan nodded slowly. I used to dream of Earth, he said. But now it feels like Earth dreams of me. And not in a good way. They shared a quiet laugh. The kind that only two tired souls can share. There was no fear in her eyes now, only tired strength and something warmer. Raylan began repairing the ship's panel. His sleeves rolled up. Oren walked over and helped, her fingers moving smoothly. Their hands touched by accident, neither pulled away. You were a scientist? He asked. Yes, she replied. Before the war, before the chains. I was a soldier. He said, before the medals, before I met you. Oren looked at him. You changed. Raylan nodded. You made me change. They sat on the floor, sharing dried rations in silence, outside. The black space stretched forever. Inside, something small but powerful was growing. Do you miss your people? Raylan asked. Yes. She said, but I do not miss who I was. With them, I was smart, respected, but I never felt free. And now? I am still hunted, she said, smiling. But now, I feel like I belong to myself. Raylan looked at her for a long time. His voice was softer now. You're not my prisoner, he said. And you were never my reward. I know. She whispered, but you're the first human who ever said that. Suddenly, the ship shook. Just a small jolt, an asteroid field passed near. Barely brushing their path, Raylan grinned. If we survive this, maybe I'll marry you, he joked. Oren blinked. Confused? Marry? It's a human thing, he said. A promise to protect, to stay, to choose each other. She tilted her head, thinking. Then she smiled. Okay, she said. Raylan laughed. No, I mean. It was a joke. I wasn't joking. Oren said calmly, you choose me, I choose you. The laughter stopped. Not because it was awkward, but because it wasn't. The silence became heavy, meaningful. Raylan looked into her silver eyes and saw truth. He wasn't sure when the fear had turned to friendship or when friendship had turned to something warmer, but now he felt it fully. A pull, a peace, a promise. "I don't have a ring," he said. "I don't need one," she replied. "Just don't leave." He nodded. "I won't." They sat together, watching stars blink in the far distance. No music, no ceremony, no words in stone. But something real had been made, not out of tradition, but out of choice. Later, Oren showed him a small device she had kept hidden, a star map made by her. People, it glowed softly in the air between them. Lines stretched across unknown systems. "Here," she said, pointing to a bright cluster. "My people's hidden world." Raylan stared at it. "Are they alive?" "Some," she said. "If we go there, they may help us." Raylan nodded slowly. "Then let's go." "They might not trust you," she warned. "They'll see a human, a soldier." He smiled. "Then I'll let them see my wife first." Oren looked down, trying not to show emotion. But Raylan saw her hands shaking slightly. Not in fear, in something deeper. She reached out and placed her hand over his heart. "We are strange together," she said, "but I feel strong near you. You make me feel like the war didn't." When Raylan leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers, "The war took everything." He whispered, "But maybe it gave me something too, for the first time in a long time." The silence didn't feel empty. It felt full. Like the space between stars had meaning, and somewhere out in that dark galaxy, love had grown where pain had once lived. The hidden world of our Rain's people came into view like a ghost rising from shadows. A gas cloud surrounded the planet, hiding it from scanners. But our Rain's star map led them through with perfect precision. Raylan sat in the pilot's seat, following her voice, not the ship's instruments. Every part of him was tense, ready, but also calm. They broke through the fog, and the sky opened. Below them was a planet of silver forests and crystal lakes. Ruins of towers stood like broken teeth across the land. But lights still glowed beneath the ground. Her people were alive, hiding, surviving, waiting. Raylan looked at her. "You sure they won't shoot us down?" Oren gave a small smile. "If they do, they'll miss me. And you," she added softly. The ship landed near a cliffside cave. Figures stepped out from the shadows, tall and silent. Their skin was pale blue like our Rain's. Their weapons hummed with ancient energy. One of them stepped forward, his eyes sharp. "Oren?" he asked, his voice deep. She stepped down from the ramp. "I'm alive," she said. "I brought help." Raylan followed her, careful not to move too fast. The alien warriors raised their weapons but did not fire. Oren held up her hand. "This one is mine," she said firmly. "He is not my master. He is my partner." The warriors looked confused, but they stepped back. Oren led Raylan into the caves, where soft lights lit the walls. Holograms flickered maps, warnings, old plans. Children ran between the rocks. Wide-eyed and quiet, a woman with silver eyes and a scar down her cheek approached. She embraced Oren tightly. "You came back." She whispered, "I was not alone," Oren replied, glancing back at Raylan. The woman looked at him with suspicion. "Human?" "Yes," he replied. "But I didn't come as a soldier. I came as a husband." They took him to the council, elders with glowing robes and quiet eyes. They listened as Oren spoke of the war, the collar, the escape. She told them everything. Raylan stood silent beside her. When they asked him why he helped her, he said only one thing: "Because I saw a person, not a prisoner." There was a long silence. Then one elder stood. "We were broken," he said. "We forgot who we were, but maybe this is the time to remember." The plan began that night. The humans thought our Rain's people were gone, scattered, afraid, but in truth, they had been building. Waiting, Raylan offered codes. Old access points, supply routes. He knew how the human fleet moved, how they tracked, how they lied, with Arane's knowledge and Raylan's insight. The pieces fit together. They would expose the truth, not with war, but with proof. They found a deep signal chamber buried under the planet's crust. Oren stepped into the core, surrounded by light. She uploaded the stolen data, recordings, experiments, war crimes, names, orders, chains, everything. Raylan stood at her side, guarding the room as the files spread across the galaxy. Screens on human ships blinked red. Commanders read things they had tried to erase. Soldiers questioned orders. People began to wake up. Then the fleet arrived. Ships covered the sky, ready to erase the planet once and for all. Raylan and Oren stood. At the edge of the cliff, hand in hand, she looked at him. This is the end. He shook his head. No, he said, this is the beginning. A wave of support signals came in. Rebel ships, alien survivors, even some human defectors. They surrounded the planet like a shield. The fleet commander sent one final message. Surrender the alien woman or be destroyed. Oren stepped forward, opened a channel. I am not yours. She said, I was never yours. This planet is mine. These people are mine. And this man, she said, looking at Raylan, he is mine too. The fleet paused, a moment stretched across the stars. And then they turned away, one ship at a time. The fleet retreated. Raylan exhaled. Oren leaned her head on his shoulder. They're gone, for now, he said. But we'll be ready next time. Together, they returned to the caves. Children ran to them. Elders bowed their heads. They were not just survivors now. They were leaders. And somewhere deep inside the planet, hope began to grow again. Not as a weapon, but as a choice. A soldier and a scientist, a human and an alien. Not enemies, not strangers, but partners, together. They had fought. Together, they had won.